I was only a priest for the last 2 years and a bit before I resigned to become a Muslim. So, my life was spent, largely around from the age of 16 at, connected with Holy Cross. A community that I have great affection and love for, a community that I acknowledge is, has been rocked by me making this choice. But it was a choice that, that I felt utterly guided by Allah to make. And that is, I felt that my life experience as a Christian, including struggling with Christianity, with aspects of it, was a reflection of my search for God. And my search for God wasn't really complete in orthodoxy. While I was Orthodox through those years, it's not that I didn't, look elsewhere saying, is this right? I became Orthodox in a church that the parish priest had died in 1973. I became Orthodox in 1978, and we had no resident priest from 1973 to 1994. We only had priests flying in every 6-7 weeks from the mainland of Australia. So it was a kind of, a community without leadership, and so that helped shape my religious life, I guess. It was a community that I loved, and which is why when I spoke with my bishop about, send us a priest, he said, well, why don't you become a priest? So, in as part of that requirement, I, commenced theological studies, and that really made me drill down on the Bible and on church history, and the fact that so much that is in the Bible, which, as we know, has been shaped by theologians and the fathers of the church after many years and indeed centuries after Christ was on this earth, that there was, a mass of accretions, doctrinal, additions, which got reflected in the Constantinopolitan Creed, and then the subsequent creeds, as espoused through the councils of the church. So I came to kind of the conclusion that there was challenge in the doctrine of the Trinity, which was not referenced in the way the church teaches it, in the way most Christians, Catholics, Protestants, Orthodox conceive of the Trinity. And that was, problematic. But it was not, an intellectual conviction that brought me to Islam. So I'll recount, what happened. I had to go to Perth to my brother-in-law's funeral to support my sister. Perth's on the other side of the country, 5-hour flight away. And when I went there, I booked a hotel. And I noticed when I booked it that it was, only 150 yards from the Perth main masjid, which was actually built at the turn of the 19th and 20th century. I think substantially by Afghan immigrants who were brought over in the days before rail to bring camels, because they were like they were the equivalent of trains of their day. And while there were earlier masjids set up in Western Australia and in other places, this one was, a substantial one built. Anyway, I was staying very close to it. And every day I walked around it, past it, and I felt this, call to go and visit it. But I was nervous, as an Orthodox priest. And nonetheless, I chose to go in, and I went and sat in this lovely courtyard garden, nobody around, and just sat and thought, about this as a house of God. I subsequently, on another visit, sitting there, met the Imam, and he gave me a Quran, And now it's true, you know, for years I've had a Quran on my bookshelf, barely touched it. But this time I went back to my hotel and, you know, I prostrated and asked God, you know, show me the absolute truth. Show me whether Islam is true or false, whether Christianity is right or wrong, whether Orthodox Christianity is right or wrong. And I prayed for some time on my knees, prostrate. Orthodox Christians actually prostrate in a way very similar to Islamic sujood, especially in penitential seasons. Anyway, I was used to prostration. I prostrated and prayed. And then I sat up and I read Quran, and I realized, you know, intuitively, intellectually, emotionally, spiritually, that this was the actual word of God that I had not paid heed to, not paid respect to. And I read it with completely different eyes. And I just knew, I instantly knew that this was the absolute truth and that I could no longer ignore it.